Check this out. I upgraded my 6x accessible box loader, the one in this video. So what has changed? It now detects dropper overflow from every dropper. The old design only had one dropper overflow detection for the full box detection. That's the part that detects when the Shulker box is full. Let me quickly show you how it works, in case you don't know. But wait, I'm going to show you how we load items in the first place, and then show you what happens when the box is full. Alright, you see this dropper? This comparator reads whenever the hoppers send items into it, and power this torch. The torch turns off, the rails turn off, this observer detects that, sends a pulse to this rail, then sends a pulse to this rail, and just like that, we now have a clock that's going to power all of these droppers in this dropper wall, and send our items down. We control each slice individually to reduce lag and noise. Okay, now we can touch on the full box detection. This observer powers this skull and this dropper via quasi-connectivity. The skull is powered first, then the dropper. These observers see the changes in the power states of the skull and dropper and send power to these droppers while keeping the order of priority while they fire. Technically, the top observer can power both droppers, but we need the bottom one to send an update that is required for the bottom dropper to power. But why is that? That's because quasi-connectivity wasn't an intentional game mechanic when it was introduced. So what ended up happening is that redstone components wouldn't send enough block updates to let quasi-connectivity affected components know that they receive power. In our situation over here, only powering with the top observer will let the top dropper fire but not the second one, because the second one doesn't receive an update from the top observer. Let's visualize updates in a simple way. You need to understand two things that work hand in hand but are different. On one hand, you have power, and on the other, you have updates. When a redstone component powers something, it doesn't do anything if it doesn't send an update at the same time. See this dust, for example. If you change the direction of this piece of dust without changing its power level, you won't create any update. But you are indeed powering something. It's just that this something doesn't know it yet. The way it'll know is with an update. Different redstone components have a different reach for sending updates. Observers extend one block past them. Imagine this red glass is the area of update. When the observer powers, any component touching the red glass area will get updated. If it receives power, it will power. However, if the component is outside the update range or doesn't receive power from anything, nothing will happen. So, if you understand all of that, you understand that the bottom dropper gets power from quasi-connectivity, but it is outside the update range. The bottom observer therefore sends an additional update that will be in range to update the bottom dropper. The update lets the dropper know that it's powered, even though the top observer couldn't update it by itself. Let's pause for a second. Are you learning anything? Do me a favor and like the video if you are. And now, why did we spend all of that time learning about quasi-connectivity? That's because you have to understand that this component makes sure that the bottom dropper is always empty. When we power this observer, the items in this dropper will travel to the Shulker box instantly, because we triggered both the droppers in the right order in the same game tick. And that's helpful to us, because that'll skip the comparator reading over here. Whenever an item can't fit into a Shulker box, it will fail to enter the box and sit into this dropper, and that lets the comparator read that there's an item inside of the dropper. And like I said at the start of the video, we now have 3 of these instead of just 1. These will each power a piston that will start the Shulker box swapping sequence. The pistons are powered by quasi-connectivity because there is no other way of sending a signal other than that within this space constraint. You'll notice that these pistons are not holding redstone blocks. It's kind of obvious why. If I use redstone blocks, these droppers would get powered by default and the dropper clock above wouldn't work at all. That was a simple enough challenge. The next one is a little bit trickier. I need to start the box swapping sequence whenever any of the dropper readings read an item. So I kinda have to connect a wire that gets a signal from all of these. Simple enough, just put a line of redstone dust, right? Well, not so quick. I need this box loader to be tileable every 3 blocks, so I can't have one slice interfere with another one. So what did I do? My best, man. I did my best. Instead of a straight line of dust, I went with 2 pieces of dust and a piston. But that was tricky. See? All these wires are going to end up powering this piston at the very back. So I started with this line of dust and the piston wired like that. But then, this dust can power an adjacent piston when we tell the slice. That's no bueno. If the center full box detection fires, we can detain the power inside the slice by using glass as our dust support. That's because redstone dust can transmit signal down the glass block, so it stays in the slice and powers the back piston. Nice! But for this side over here, what do we do? No, you can't do that. It's the only way. No, you can't do that! It goes against the moral code. Stop! I'm sorry. It's the only way. I hate target blocks. The crafting recipe is cancer, but I couldn't find anything else. If this full box detection fires, that will push this target block and redirect the dust so it can power the adjacent piston, and it will power the piston at the back. Now that we've sacrificed everything, let's talk about these skulls. What's the matter with these skulls? Can't you just use rails like you did in the previous design? I recently got a message on Discord saying that my previous 6x box loader wasn't working properly. When you opened the box while it was loading, the full box detection would trigger. What the fuck? I tested it and never had that issue. I opened the 1.21 instance and tried it. What the fuck is going on again? What broke? What changed with game versions? I made a help ticket on Storage Tech Discord and gave as much info as possible. Command Leo quickly responded to me. Where does that lead to? Huh. Okay. Here probably. 1.20.2. Shulker boxes now send block updates when opening and closing. That's the only thing I could say. So how do we fix the issue at hand? Man, I don't even understand why the update breaks this shit in the first place. I tested different setups to replace the rails, and somehow it worked. I don't understand why, but blocks that send block updates seem to now not work in my setup in 1.20.2 and above. So if I want to keep the silent specs, I have 2 choices, mob heads and hoppers. Hoppers are more laggy, but if you can't afford the skulls, go for hoppers. It's not that big of a deal. Or even go for fence gates. What do I care about? It's gonna make a shit ton of noise, but if you don't care, go for it. You might have also noticed these composters that seemingly do nothing. What are they there for? Noise reduction. If you have a dropper with one item pointing into a composter, that will make the dropper silent. If you want to learn more neat tricks like I've been showing you since the start, you might want to take a look at this video. It has a couple of useful tricks like that. I'll leave the video in the pinned comment and show it at the end of the video as well. I don't know if you remember that long time ago when I was actually explaining to you the start of the box breaking sequence. You want me to keep going? Well, I'll explain the rest anyway. We were talking about the piston at the back, this one. When it activates, it's gonna activate 3 things. Let's go over them in order. There's this piston pushing a stack of concrete powder. When the concrete powder moves up, this comparator is going to power this dust through this top block and power these 3 rail lines. These rail lines are part of the main clock that goes on when we detect items in each of these 3 slices. By keeping these rails powered, we ensure that the clocks are disabled and can't send items down at the wrong moment while we swap the shulker box. At the same time as we powered the redstone dust, we also powered the piston under the comparator. This piston moves down this 1 block and it does nothing. Yet. During this time, we also powered this piston, which sent this observer under these crafters. That's the second tragedy with this box loader. You see this torch over there? I can't replace it with anything. It has to be there to make the red concrete block here send power to this dust. If I use droppers instead of crafters, this torch, it would QC power the bottom piston. I'm sorry, I can't make it work below 1.21. What do the crafters do though? Well, the top one has the comparator reading that keeps the dispenser on. Why do you keep it on though? Just use an observer instead. Yeah, but you don't understand it.
Huh?
Listen to this sound. You think that's okay? You think I want to hear a dispenser clicking in a 5 miles radius? Well, I don't know, it just feels unnecessarily complicated. I know. When I push the observer in place, it's going to send power to this crafter that's empty and do nothing. Then it will send power to this crafter that has 9 pieces of dust, and it will craft that dust into a block and send it down into the bottom crafter. Now that this comparator is off and that we turned off the main clock, we can start the box breaking sequence. That part isn't really fancy wiring wise, but it looks pretty cool to watch. Over there, you'll see that I used the powder snow. I know it's not fun to collect, but I tried using fence gates and they just don't work. Unfortunately, we have to use powder snow. When the old box is broken and there are no pistons in the way, we can dispense our new Shulker box by powering the bottom crafter and sending items into the top crafter, letting the comparator read the inventory and power the dispenser. And once the new Shulker box is here, we can send a pulse through this wire at the back, and that's going to send a pulse to this clock. Remember our useless block from earlier? Well, it allowed this clock to form, and now that the clock received a pulse, it's going to clock and clear all the items in the dropper detections while the main clocks are still deactivated. When the dropper detections read empty, all the wires powering the back piston are going to turn off. By turning off, the concrete powder piston is going to retract, like the other ones, and remove power from the piston that forms the box replacement item clock and let the main clocks work again. These two pistons do nothing when they unpower. And for the rest, there isn't much else interesting to talk about. You have the empty boxes hopper line running down here. Make sure you just fill the top dispenser with empty Shulker boxes before using the slice, because the dropper tower doesn't power in order, so the first boxes are going to take a few box swappings to go up. For the item intake, you align the items against the double chest and make them slide across these hoppers. And finally, if you actually use this target block, you're done. Place a regular block and put redstone dust on top of it. The only reason why it's a target block is because it reduces the footprint area by 1 block. And that's everything with the new 6x box holder. Join my Discord server for my archive, go watch this video for more cool wiring tricks, or watch this older video to see the tumultuous journey I had to go through to make the base for this new box holder. See you later.